Welcome back to Afternoon Live. Our next guest's book has been called The Gay Eat, Pray, Love. He's here to share how his marriage didn't make him whole, his divorce did. We welcome the author of How to Burn a Rainbow, Karl Dunn. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show.
I love the title of the book. I got to ask you a first question. How did you come up with that?
You know what? Now, here's an interesting part of the tale. I would love to tell you that I came up with the title, but actually, it came out of a conversation I was having with a straight guy that I'd met who was about to embark on his own divorce. I had a different title, and he just went, I think you should call this How to Burn a Rainbow. I could really see myself in it then. I was like, oh, yes, that's fantastic.
How interesting. We can all learn things from each other, no matter what. So you talked about looking for a book like this and couldn't find one when you were embarking on your divorce journey. What made you want to sit down and really write it yourself? It must have been kind of a labor of love, but I imagine it was difficult at times.
It was definitely. I mean, I wanted to write this book because I first went looking for a book on same-sex divorce and I couldn't find one when my divorce began in 2017. And while there's a lot of similarities, I think between heterosexual and same-sex divorces, I was definitely experiencing kinds of loss that were very unique, I think, to us. So I started writing it, and it really turned into two stories. You know, first is what happened to me in my life because of my divorce, where I went from living in this, loft house in the LA hills with a fabulous high-flying advertising career to just a few months later, I was sleeping on an air mattress in a former squat in Berlin, with no money, no visas, no lawyers, no end of my divorce in sight. But that set off the bigger story, and I think this is the one that I'm the proudest of in the book, is about the journey that I went on to figure out who I was. And that's also where the title came from, or what it represents is that I think, like a lot of people, I've been chasing rainbows my whole life, the next job, the next relationship, the next city, and they never fulfill us. There's external validation that we never really feel whole or happy because of them. So I just burnt them all throughout every script I've been given and figured out who I was and started writing a book about it instead.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that, chasing that rainbow, always chasing something that you think is going to be the thing. So take me back to 2017. What was the turning point for you where you realized this marriage isn't serving me anymore, and how did you find the courage to say it out loud?
Well, it was something that had been going for a while. I mean, my husband and I had had a point, which the readers will read about in the book, where we had a point where we nearly broke, and when we lasted another year after that. But then there were just a couple of things that happened that just made me realize I'm never going to find myself if I stay in this relationship. And, this is no fault of, my ex-husband. We had created a dynamic together that I think we both got lost in. I certainly did. And so, yeah, just a conversation with a friend of mine one day made it really clear to me I had to get a divorce. I had to set out on my own. And it was terrifying. I mean, it really was, because I hadn't realized until I began it how much of my identity was tied up in my marriage and the fact that I was a married gay man and my husband, and all these things were what I used to sort of represent me and justify me and my worth in the world. But then I had to set out and figure it out on my own. And it is scary, but far better to be on your own and figuring yourself out than to be in a situation where you're not happy, which also means if it isn't working for you, it's not working for them either.
Sure.
So,
what were some things that you learned about yourself along the way?
I mean,
that's a big question.
Everything. Honestly, yeah, and it's a big answer. I mean, I would say I learned everything about myself. I realized actually through going through this journey, is that I'd been running away from myself my entire life. And, I've had a great life. I've lived in so many countries around the world because of my job in advertising. I've been able to experience so many cultures, have so many incredible life experiences. But when it came to the kind of hard stuff that's inside us all, the scary things, I ran faster than anyone you've ever seen from those things. And instead, what happened with my divorce was I used it as my crisis of identity, and I made myself sit with all of it and not run from any of it. And what was also really helpful, and I think, anyone watching can attest to this if they've gone on a similar journey themselves or set out on a course in their life. Guides pop up all along the way to help you, and they come at exactly the right time with exactly the piece of information you need right there. So it's funny, some people who've read the book have said it kind of plays out almost like a film or a
Yeah.
TV show, but that is what life is like when when you have the bravery to set out, the universe conspires to help you. I think so. That's what I believe.
Yeah, you have to pay attention sometimes, but there's usually somebody
Yeah,
trying to help you along the way. Hey, I'm interested to
100%.
hear from you. Are there certain things about same-sex divorce that are surprising to straight couples that it's just a different experience?
Yes, I would definitely say so. I mean, for myself, the kinds of losses that I was experiencing, I think, are quite different from a heterosexual relationship. So, in a heterosexual divorce, of course, there is the death of the relationship, and there's all the sadness and grieving that goes with that. But then also for same-sex couples, what I'd lost was that kudos of being married. There is definitely a sense of equality that having a ring on this finger magically confers on you, or is conferred on you by society. I mean, the props you get for being married were incredible, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and this is something that I talk about in the book as well. Is that when the day I got engaged, and when I went back, the first day I was back in the office after I got engaged, all of the guys who were married came running out, and they were like, "Man, you did it," and there were back slaps and champagne all round, and it was such a great day. But I realized on that day, it was the first time in my life I'd ever felt like I was as good as they were, which is it's a terrible thing to say, and it's something that, we don't like to say this in the fight,
Sure.
but this is my personal experience. Was I had this thing, and it was the same as everybody else's, and then when that was gone, I lost all of that. I also lost my kind of, my hiding place, if you like, in the gay world. It's often, I'm sure you and the viewers often hear about safe spaces, but I mean, I kind of lost those because we'd just been allowed to get married. And then here I am 2 years later getting divorced.
Wow.
And, people made their opinions about that very clear to me
Oh, isn't that nice
in
when they do
these.
that?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, like come back and talk to me when you've been married and you've been through it, and then maybe we can have a
Sure.
chat about that. But I understand the frustration because I blew the dream. For a lot of people saw me as, like a guy who took a machete to the wedding cake that they hadn't even had the chance to taste yet. So there was definitely a sense of that as well. So there was a lot of different kinds of loss,
Yeah,
I would say,
that's
that
so
are
interesting,
unique
but it
to.
makes sense when you explain it that way, that it's just a different, version of something else that I wouldn't understand. But thank you so much for talking with us. This was really fun to chat about.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the
Oh,
show.
good. Thank you. We'll have more information about the book on our website at katu.com, and we'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.